Recording again. Here we go. All right, Mr. Wolfson. Lunar wants to know who are your clients? What causes do you advocate for as a lobbyist?
So we are focused almost entirely on financial services issues. So insurance, banking. All of my clients are in the housing, real estate sector.
All right. And so what sort of you've identified what your clients are, who your clients are, but what sort of policies are you trying to advocate for these clients?
And it's a great question, and it really varies. Some clients are on defense. And what I mean by that is maybe Congress is thinking about passing a law that is going to be detrimental to their business, or maybe it's a federal agency that wants to do a regulation that they have concerns with. Others just want to stay informed in terms of what the government is up to, because it ultimately, what government does affects every business in America, and so they want to stay on top of that. Some of them are actually, and this is actually surprisingly rare, but I think of my 8 clients, there's one that is actually trying to pass a law, which is what you'd probably think I do every single day, but that is actually the exception to the rule. And then the only other thing I'd kind of mention on that front is, you open the newspaper and you hear kind of about the big issues that are, dominating the day. And most of us lobbyists toil in more obscure, arcane, like little provisions. Our stuff isn't making the front pages.
Is that so? This is me interjecting. Is that like a positive or a negative? I mean, in some ways, you're working in the shadows. It seems like.
I don't think it's either. I think that there are more minor issues that don't capture the same level of attention as, say, the climate change bill that Congress just passed. Some kind of small provision dealing with title insurance is just not going to catch anyone's attention. It doesn't mean that it's being done undercover, because people are aware of it, but it's not going to make the front page of the Washington Post, and I'm okay with that.
All right. So Natalie wants to know, how do you actually persuade people? What is your technique for persuading someone to pass a law or to not pass a law, or whatever you're doing with these government people? Charm. Yes.
I'm very.
You witnessed that already.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of it really starts with knowing who to go to. If we have a client and it's a bank and it's looking for something that might address a regulation, we're probably not going to go to Elizabeth Warren, well-known senator who hates banks. So the first thing that we do is identify who are the people on the Hill who are inclined to be in agreement with us, because, and this kind of gets to the heart of lobbying, it's not necessarily persuading them that you're right. It's persuading them to do something about it. They're inclined to agree with you more often than not, but they've got a million issues that they're dealing with every single day. So why should they do something about this issue? And then obviously we want to make sure that we tailor our arguments to their philosophy.
Right. So do you think? So I guess Reham asked, do lobbyists actually influence the law? Or I refine it as, how much influence do you think you and other lobbyists have over what laws are passed or how laws are passed or any of these things?
I think we have a good deal of influence, because again, we have the expertise, but also we connect the government to the industries that the government is regulating. And so, believe it or not, a lot of lawmakers, if they're going to pass a banking bill, they want to hear from Bank of America and Wells Fargo. That doesn't mean that they're going to do whatever the banks tell them to do, and some of them may want to do the exact opposite. But they do realize that meaning the members of the House and Senate, don't necessarily have the expertise here in whatever subject matter that they're legislating, and so they want to turn to someone who does, and they want to know how it's impacting the businesses that are going to be impacted.
Do most of these politicians also meet with a lobbyist who's advocating against what you're advocating? For example, if there's some consumer group or something that's against the banks on something, are they meeting with you and also the people who disagree with you, or are they just meeting with you?
So some are going to meet with both sides, and some are not. And by the way, you bring up a great example of banks against consumer groups, but banks don't just take on consumer groups. They also take on other banks that are regulated differently or a different size. They also take on the credit unions. There's a lot of different, a law might, one of the things that we oftentimes talk about is how a potential law or regulation is going to tip the scales and maybe help big banks at the expense of smaller community banks, and how to keep a level playing field. So it gets much more complicated than just the consumer groups. And so even if a senator isn't meeting with the consumer groups, they are going to meet with all those varied interests that I just sort of rattled off.
Okay. Edgar and Ryan both asked, have you personally had an influence or a major influence on, do you have a story of a way that you have influenced the law?
I had more influence over laws, frankly, when I was in government. Lobbyists do have influence for sure, but whenever I think of like my big successes, it was when I worked for the congressman I mentioned, or when I worked at HUD.
Is that part of being a lobbyist? As a lobbyist, you don't want to take credit for it. You want to give credit to the congressman.
It's right? Look, it's a fine line, because if someone wants to hire me, I of course want to tout my successes, but ultimately we're on the outside looking in, and the people who get most of the credit are the elected officials.
Right. So there's a bunch of different questions that are all kind of similar, that basically are about sort of ethical concerns, or whether you or lobbyists generally sometimes represent, companies that are against the public interest, and whether there's any conflict there, or if there's if lobbyists ever only choose jobs that align with their own personal beliefs, or how that all works. So if you have any insight into that, I'm interested.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have no doubt that there are going to be, there are exceptions to everything, but we try to work with clients with whom we are in agreement with. I wouldn't feel comfortable going up to Capitol Hill and advocating for something I don't believe in. That said, and this kind of gets back to my earlier point, it's important to note that again, we're dealing with obscure sort of banking regulations as opposed to kind of uh, you know uh, weighty issues like abortion rights or something like that. So something would have to like really be like I don't want to. Let me answer it this way. I wouldn't want to represent any client that I felt was unethical or doing bad business. But from a policy standpoint, we're pretty much aligned.
But do you think you are typical of the average lobbyist, or do you think there are some other lobbyists who are less concerned with who they're representing?
I think most lobbyists. Look. First of all, we're all representing legal industry. So, like, I'm not a tobacco lobbyist, and I understand that some people might think that tobacco is against the public interest, but it is a legal product. A lot of people don't like pharmaceutical companies, but again, so to some degree, I also think of it. I mean, I know, Seth, you mentioned that this is a law class, and I sometimes think of it the way that any defendant deserves a lawyer, and similarly, if you're an industry and you're a legal industry, you have the right to advocate and use your First Amendment rights to talk to the government.
I will say, though, that if you cannot afford a lawyer will be provided for you, but that is not true of lobbyists.
I don't do a lot of pro bono work. You're right.
All right. This is my favorite question, right? Lee Wen had a very similar question.
Better than my favorite. This is Alan's. My favorite color.
This is Alan's phrasing. He said, "Is there illegal activity going on when you help legislators make laws? Do not lie," in capital letters. So you're on the hot seat here, Mr. Wolfson. So have you ever witnessed any corruption or illegal activity?
I have not. Certainly nothing that comes to mind.
All right. All right. Well, I trust you. That was in capital letters that it said "do not lie," so you wouldn't lie under those circumstances. All right.
All the preceding questions, I kind of fibbed a little bit, but to that one I took, because it was actually all didn't letters.
Right. Your favorite color is actually purple, but you lied.
That's right.
Okay. So Christopher wants to ask, do you think this system of making laws is fair for everyone? Or do you think there's something dysfunctional about the way that lawmaking exists in the United States?
I think there's a lot of problems with it, but this is not one of them.
When you say this, you mean just lobbying?
I think there's a lot of problems with the way laws are made in this country, but I don't think that lobbying is one of them. I think lobbying is a symptom of the government that we have. The way I always put it, the bigger government gets, the more you're going to have lobbyists, because the more that government is involved in every industry in America, the more every industry is going to need to make sure that they are in tune with what the government is doing, and speaking to their elected officials.
Right. I think, though, this fairness thing, I may be reading between the lines here of what Christopher's question was about, but I feel like it's about sort of access, and like that certain groups, like these banks, have you who know all these senators and can get easy access to the government, whereas poor people don't have access. And I don't know, and there's some inherent fairness. Would you agree with that, or you think that's not true?
I don't agree with that, because first of all, as you noted earlier, there are a lot of consumer groups, a lot of just in my world, there are all sorts of coalitions for affordable housing, for low-income housing, for the homeless, that are advocating on those issues. I'd remind that organizations like the Sierra Club, which is a pro-environment lobby, National Abortion Rights League. I mean, there are lobbyists on both sides of every public policy issue, and you have to either hate all the lobbyists or love us all. I love us all.
Oh, we love you all. We love the ones who come to our classroom and will
Yeah.
spend some time talking to
Yeah.
us. All right. So a bunch of people are just interested in the job. Milena, RJ, Sal, Jasmine all asked questions like, do you like being a lobbyist? Is it interesting? Why or why not? What are some good things about your job?
I love being a lobbyist. Two reasons. I like public policy, and I actually get to work on these issues that I find very interesting every single day. The other is I'm a people person, and this is very much a kind of a face-to-face industry. I get to meet with interesting people and talk to them every single day, instead of just sitting at my desk. And so I like being out there talking to people about issues I care about.
That's great. All right, was a very common question, but I'm gonna depersonalize it a little bit and say, how much money does a lobbyist ordinarily make? That was not the question that was normally asked, but I'm not gonna ask you how much you
Yeah.
make.
Yeah. It really, really varies, Seth. I mean, it varies greatly. I couldn't even some make under 100K and some make over 1 million, and others make everything in between. I mean, like I said, it really varies.
Okay. Do you go, Darnell wants to know, do you go to conventions, and what has been your favorite convention so far?
I've only been to one convention in my life, and that was in the year 2000, the Republican convention in Philadelphia, when George W. Bush was nominated the first time. So that was a long, long time ago. I don't normally go.
All right. Ruth wanted to know what your wife and family think about your job. You can bring them in if you want.
Yeah, no, I'll she's in the other room and can hear this. I hope she is supportive of it. I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Derek wants to know what qualities do you think led to your success the most? How would somebody achieve what you've achieved in government and in lobbying?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think you have to be smart and take an interest in these issues and really delve into them, because they are very complicated, and so I think that understanding is a big part of it. The other part of it is just sort of having the right personality for it.
And what do you mean by the right personality? Just someone who likes to be around people?
To be around people. I mean, that's like, look, I know introverts who are good lobbyists, so I don't mean it as an extrovert introvert, but you have to have kind of you have to want to talk to people. You have to be outgoing. I think that's an important part of it. So it's kind of a mix of personality and smarts.
All right, and this is the last question. This is from Julissa, and she didn't specify a time frame, so I'm going to say high school, Mr. Wolfson.
Okay.
This is the question. If you were looking at yourself now as a past self, if you were looking back, do you think high school, Mr. Wolfson would be content about where you are in life now?
Yes, in fact, I think my high school self would be more than content, because I've really enjoyed all of the jobs that I had, both in government and outside of government. So I think my high school self would be pleased.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. You're our first guest ever, and I think this is a great interview, and I really appreciate you coming to the class, and I know everybody's going to really enjoy this tomorrow. So thank you.
Fantastic. All right,
All
Seth.
right. All right. Bye-bye, Mr. Wolfson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
We're done.
Are we done recording?